And we are live. My name's JP Berg, and this is Dumb the Wiser, the show where we try to make sense of a very mad world. Today, as you could see, we're joined with our very good friend, Mr. Payman Ascari from the free state of Florida. How you doing, Payman?
I'm doing pretty good. Apologies for my attire. I didn't have time to put a shirt and tie on today.
I like it, man. It makes me feel fancier. So yeah, we were talking a bit before the stream, and we were getting on to the topic of rents and the inflation relative to the scarcity in the housing and rental markets. And I was telling Payman, the building I'm in a very working class neighborhood of the HRM, and the building I'm in, just to give perspective, in 2020 was actually $900 for a 2-bedroom unit, which was reasonable. 2025, that same 2-bedroom unit is worth $2,400. And then the provincial government steps in and grandfathers rents in. So if you've been in here prior to the rent increases, they can only increase it as certain increment. I believe it's 2%. My rent goes up every 6 months, about 2%. I believe that's what it is. But what it does is it creates an environment where it's pitting everyone against each other. Like the tenants in the building are blaming the landlord. The landlord is looking at the economy and thinking, I'm not able to sell my product for market rate. Like we're so quick to just kind of agree with the state. Like it's a bad thing. It's capitalism is bad. These greedy landlords, these greedy capitalists, but it's frequently the socialist policies that cause this problem. And you get that positive feedback loop, like a snake eating its own tail. But what are your thoughts, Payman?
Mamdani, he just won yesterday or today. I guess he got elected, and he's now the first openly democratically socialist mayor of New York, openly. Maybe before they were. And what happens is, like, they're pitting us against each other, as you always say. We're looking left and right. We're fighting amongst each other rather than looking up. So they introduce policies that drive up the cost of living, and then they turn around to the tenants who are they're trying to survive at the end of the day. They like anybody that comes along and helps them, they're like, oh, a rent freeze? Great. They don't have time to take time off from their work to figure out why it is that the rent went up to begin with, and they're getting away with murder. And this is why I've been saying we need to stop being in this reaction mode where every time Mark Carney drops a budget or some bad bill comes out, we start screaming about the bill. We should be looking at what is institutionally wrong in our form of government, where 60, 70, 80 years ago, everybody could afford to buy a home from a working class salary, to now, even the middle class, 2 lawyers can't ever afford to purchase a home.
Yeah, it's a luxury, and it's totally out of touch of the working class, and that's has a destabilizing effect in and of itself, because that's how working class people retire. Essentially, if you can't store your equity in your home and you're just paying these high rents it's like I equate it to running full speed and just standing still, right? It's like you're wading the water with all you have, and you're just barely able to keep your head above it. And that's a reality for many working people. And it all stems, people don't realize this. It almost everything stems from the weaponized mass migration. Now they utilize the whole pretense of, well, there's no one to work these jobs. Like we have a population problem. There's a lot of people retiring, so we need people in the workforce. But what you would do to pragmatically approach that problem would be natalist policies. You would incentivize working people to have babies by making their life a little more affordable. But what our government did was a weaponized mass migration strategy. That was a pretense of it, was to have people come in to work these jobs. And essentially, there's all kinds of corporations and businesses in Canada that are entirely addicted to these foreign temporary worker programs, and it's stagnating working class wages of regular Canadians. It's inflating our housing market. It's decimated our healthcare. And the biggest thing, and this is becoming very relevant politically in Canada today, is it's balkanized our electorate. We're so factionalized, we can't get on board to oppose the government because our electorate consists of various special interest groups. And a lot of the immigrants that are in certain demographics, they need to be catered to. Not that they need to be catered to, but they know how to get together and make demands of they know how to play politics better than Canadians do, which is what I thought was very interesting about the Dominion Society's approach. What do you think, Payman?
Let's take them one at a time. Housing, it is a supply and demand issue, which is what immigration is, but it's also the financialization of the economy. When we say a housing bubble, that's me and you playing hot potato with a piece of real estate. I sell it to you for 2 million. You sell it to me for 2.1 million. So you made 100 grand, you go buy a steak. I sell it back to you for 2.2 million. I made 100 grand, I go buy a steak. Meanwhile, the people that don't own land, they're getting wiped out because of the inflation that causes. So that's a money issue. The shortage in labor, that's because people aren't having kids. Well, why aren't they having kids? Some of it's social. You know, the world's going to end in 20 years because the ice caps are going to melt. A lot of it is financial. You can't afford it. Like it's daunting. I was thinking about this yesterday. I'm like, I have 2 dogs. If I had 2 kids, I don't know if I would. I don't know where you're going to get the money to feed those kids. So that's another issue. And underneath all of this, the money, I think, is the central banking or just the banking interests. Because the bank, their whole profit model is you loan money out of thin air and you charge. I always forget the name. You charge interest on the loan. What are the money sharks call it? The
It's like fractional reserve or
no, the VIG. What's it called?
The VIG, yeah.
The VIG. It's the VIG. Yeah. So that's how they're getting away with this, and they're content to destabilize our societies so long as they get their profit margin, the VIG, the interest. And what happens is the concept of culture gets thrown out the window. So let's take a concrete example with immigration. We have all these Calistanis, not to pick on them. They're coming in. They're going into the trucking industry, but they haven't adhered to the cultural requirements of Canadian trucking, which is going through the necessary training. So they're causing havoc. There's a concrete example.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of issues for sure causing it. The Calistani trucking issue is interesting too, because there's a lot of there's a lot of fraud occurring. Like a lot of these individuals that have come in have owned, like they bought and purchased these trucking schools, and then they're selling the licenses. So I mean, you could even have a case where people have a legitimate licensing, but they didn't receive adequate training, and we're seeing the ramifications of that right across the country. But it's absent infrastructure reinforcement. Now, if you're going to bring an influx of individuals into a market, into any market, you would have to ensure that there's adequate infrastructure reinforcement to facilitate the influx. And Canada didn't do that, which is why it's like, again, I keep going back to this, but this can't be incompetence. There's cause and effect that people know. Now, I know Joe Average Canada is very economically illiterate, but these individuals in the government knew exactly what this was going to cause. They knew it was going to have all of these various effects, and we've seen it all over the place, right? This is kind of the Cloward Piven strategy. This is the modus operandi of what they're endeavoring to do. At the same time, they're just, everything is trumped up to a fever pitch, man. The division, it's like the Canadian word of the day is expropriation. Like they're bringing up our like tumultuous past, and we have like any other country, any other nation has a past where there were injustices, and they're utilizing this not to help the people or even the descendants of the ones who had injustice, but just to create division and to seize control. That's their ultimate end. But it's just amazing to watch how effectively they're able to play us off against one another. It's phenomenal for me to behold.
I think the higher up you go, the more people realize, or the more aware they are of the actual intention. So let's take Pierre Trudeau. I think when he introduced the Charter of Rights in '82, he knew what he was doing with Section 15.2. Like he wanted to move us away from created in God's image, individual rights to states' rights. But when you have something like a Liberal Party candidate, the representative in my writing, Patrick Weiler, when he says, we have a labor shortage, we have to bring in immigrants, I think he actually believes that. Somebody told him we have a labor shortage, and he's not considering what you just said, which should be pretty obvious. When you have a kid, you have 18 to 20 years to build the hospitals and schools and roads necessary for that kid. But when you bring in one immigrant, you have to build that out overnight. And I don't think the candidates that later become the MPs are thinking about that.
And they're definitely not. I think that's accurate. And it's funny because the quickest people to call this out are the new Canadians. People that have been granted their permanent residency. Is like the minute they get that declaration, they're like, all right, we got to stop this now, right? It's kind of like pulling the ladder up after yourself, right? But I mean, it's like they don't have the disincentive of being referred to as racist or a xenophobe or however you would word that, right? Anti-immigrant, far right. They know that they have a pass on that. It's like once we bring them in too, they're starting to get inundated with the anti-white rhetoric, the whole cultural revolution aspect of it. The way they're using diversity, I've explained this before, but it's just people need to understand how they use the language, the semantical games they're playing. It's conceptual polysemy. So when you hear diversity, to the uninitiated, to people that aren't, immersed in these conversations or has this knowledge, diversity sounds like it can't be bad. Of course it's good. It means everyone's welcome. It's diversity, right? Like it's such a seemingly positive word. But what they mean when they say that is absence of the perceived racial hegemon. They mean absence. It's actually an exclusionary term, which is peak irony, but that's how it's utilized. And now it's like it's gotten to the point, and they also, I believe they knew this, where it was inevitably going to have ethno-nationalism arise in Canada. I think this was a natural consequence of what they've done. When you bring in that much, you're making a homogenous population are suddenly like losing their stature. It's like, and they're being attacked in the culture as well. It's like, of course you're going to have that reaction. And I just see it all getting worse, man. It scares the shit out of me.
Yeah. Where should I go with that? So you're way more well-versed in the academic side of this than I am. And I'm not going to disagree with you. I fully agree with you. I'm just, I'm the ordinary guy on the ground. And I tried to make it more relatable. I was talking to this guy at a party, and he is left of center. And he was complaining about conservatives, like the Conservative Party. They come in, they pretend, they claim to be tough on crime. They introduce all of these minimum mandatory sentencing. This was before this pedophilia ruling, by the way. This is like 4 years ago. And he goes, they're doing this just because they want to cater to their far right-wing base. I think that guy today would still support getting rid of those minimum mandatory sentencing for child pornography. And it's hard for us to believe that these people actually believe this nonsense, but they do. And when you say, they knew this was happening when they did this, you're talking about the culture war stuff. They actually know what they're doing and they support it. So it's not like they're just useful idiots. They're not always useful idiots is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, 100%. This is the implementation of an agenda. And again, the best way to lend credence to that assertion is to just frame it geopolitically. These problems are not unique to Canada. They might be a little worse here than other places, or a little better in the sense of the UK. Like the UK is just, I don't know what the percentages are, but I would be surprised if English-born whites in the UK are not a minority or very close to it at this point. I actually heard that you have to convert to Islam upon landing in Heathrow, but I don't know if that's true. In all seriousness, though, the UK is such a relevant example because they've experienced everything that Canada is going through. And when you look at Pierre Poilievre, he's a Boris Johnson. Like I've said this time and time again, but people still aren't realizing, so I must say it again. Post-Brexit, Post Brexit, Boris Johnson's administration in the UK just continued with the globalist policies. Everything that was done under Labour was continued under the Conservative Party. And I mean, everyone knows to this day that Boris Johnson is a globalist. He was actually instrumental in ensuring that Ukraine and Russia went to war. He sabotaged the peace talks. But everyone knows he's a globalist. His loyalties are with Davos, just like Keir Starmer's. But there's still, despite that, and despite that being essentially accepted common knowledge, we still don't have credible, tangible evidence of that. So, I mean, when people say like, well, how can you say Pierre is a uniparty scumbag? It's like, well, because I trust the discernment capabilities of myself and I trust my eyes and ears. And there's a preponderance of circumstantial evidence that indicates that. But people, they're not just economically illiterate and politically illiterate. They almost like have no hope in this psyop. Because I believe like the uniparty is so well ingrained, and we speak about this frequently. Like if you spend any time discussing Canadian politics, you know the phrase "don't split the vote." It's all fear-based and they fall right into it. Very intelligent people do too. You can't just attribute this to aptitude. Oh, everyone's dumb. It's like, no, man, they've been like subverted. They're not waking up to the actual framing of this game. And it's hard to wake them up because of the sensational nature of it. You sound like a nutbag when you start trying to tell them what's really going on.
I'm going to sidestep the vote split issue. I want to pick up on what you said at the beginning. Pierre Poilievre, I want to explain it first through the electoral process and then financial pressures. So electorally, the Conservative Party's goal is to form government. When that's your stated goal, you have to pander to the center, the base, so that he just can't come out. Even like now I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. He just can't come out and say what you and I are saying. That by definition, because their mandate is to form government, it's not to change the country or educate the country. Then if you do get somebody that gets in, let's take like a Donald Trump, he gets in on a populist message. Now there's so much pressure from these financial institutions. BlackRock is one, the central banks are another, Brookfield, Blackstone, take your pick. They can exert pressure, Israel, APAC, and they can move the country in a different direction. I was listening to a podcast and someone said that in China, whatever we think about them, they are authoritarian. If they sense that there's a corporation in China that grows bigger than the CCP, they take it over, or they demand that they get some seats, some representation within that corporation. Again, don't have to agree with it, but that's how they tackle their problem to keep the financial interests out.
Yeah, that's very well known. There was a famous incident with a Chinese billionaire. Ma was the last name. I can't remember the gentleman's first name, but he was trying to step against them a little bit. I don't remember how that resolved for him, but I don't believe it was very good. But yeah, it's in China. It's like people say communism, but we're so distorted from communism and what communism is supposed to be. When the college kids, when the pseudo moralists say like that's not real communism, bro, they're kind of right. You almost got to grant it a little bit. Yeah, it's not a pure Marxist system because pure Marxism can't be seen. It's actually, I believe, an impossibility. In order for wealth redistribution and equity, you would have to have a consolidation of power. And then it's almost indistinguishable from any other authoritarian system, right? It's not a problem with, there would be plenty for everyone. I'm more of a libertarian-minded individual, but I think there would be plenty for everyone if we just decentralize power. That's the biggest problem, but we still do require a bit of it. I guess I'm a small L libertarian, because I'm not an anarchist. I believe the government evolved for good reason, to ensure some safety, for protectionism. To say that the government are like gangsters is disingenuous. The gangsters are like the government. The government initiated that model, that framing, and then gangsters it's a derivative of it, gangsterism. But it essentially operates on the same precepts when you get down to the how it was initialized and why it was initialized. And a lot of libertarian thinkers don't realize that it came about for good reason. But It's with China and the CCP again. It's like a neoliberal technocratic totalitarianism. I know that's a whole lot of fucking big words I just threw together, but it essentially operates with a neoliberal premise. They try to be good. It's like I've heard businessmen that have a lot of investment in China try to rationalize it when people say, "Yeah, dude, but you're like supporting an authoritarian government." I heard this one businessman, I can't remember his name, but he said, "I don't look at it like that. I look at it like parents. Some people have, very liberal parents, and some people have very strict parents. And the Chinese Communist Party is a very strict parents." And it's like, well, that's kind of a distortion of like the role of government in my understanding. But then I think that it's not that way. I think like liberalism, like what the West was, is kind of the distortion. If you look at the normal in history, it was being subjugated by a powerful government. It was being in a monarchy or a feudalist system. Like we were that far more than we had this. This is like a jewel or a diamond. I recently read The Dying Citizen by Victor Davis Hanson, and he puts emphasis on how special this moment is. And like, that's what people like if we want to hold on to this and even make it better, we have to realize what we have here, and we have to realize what we're up against. And since we were on the topic of the CCP, and I mentioned it earlier, it's like Maple Maoism. Everyone's talking about Maple MAGA. It's irrelevant right now when we're in like a cultural revolution. You're seeing it, and it's getting kicked into overdrive with this land expropriation and setting precedents for this. And it's going to play us all off against one another in the most hyper-polarized time we've ever had.
So let's start with libertarianism. Like one view of government from a libertarian perspective is government exists to facilitate commerce between individuals. So you and I live and work amongst each other. And under that framework, you have a justice system. Maybe under the justice system, you have a law enforcement agency, and you have a military to defend your borders to ensure that system within the nation. Canada right now, domestically, like we've grown beyond that to the point where the government is providing our water, our electricity, our natural gas, our education, our healthcare. So it's bloated, and then the bloat's getting bigger and bigger with the bureaucracy. Now, if you look bigger, if you look outside of the borders, like globally, I say that it's like a wedge of Swiss cheese. Those little holes in the Swiss cheese, those are the states. Everything around it is this thing that they've created. NATO, the UN, the IMF, the Bank for International Settlements, MI6, CIA, Mossad. And they're like, this is no longer anything it has nothing to do with classical liberalism. It is a cartel. It is a mafia, and it's it's like a Marvel supervillain or like a comic book villain that goes around the galaxy devouring everything in its way. It's going to these nation states, it wants its resources, its natural resources. China, Russia, and in a certain extent, Iran is pushing back against that, saying you are not coming in to steal our resources. And we have a word for that. It's called sovereignty. So we've come to this point where someone like me, a libertarian, is saying, man, this is existential. Like, it's almost like I have to put my hopes and dreams and my happiness and my yearning for individual rights aside and say, how do we prevent these people from coming in and enslaving us?
That's a good theme, because that like happened in Rome, right? Like when the oligarchy was well established, they actually had to have a Julius Caesar come in. They had to have the tyrant come in. It was the only answer at that point. I've heard a lot of people make credible cases for that. But the cheese is a good analogy, bro. I like that. And you're right about the attack on liberalism. Like I like it's not organic. These aren't failures of liberalism. It's just not. That's why the post-liberals, I find a lot of their arguments are predicated on fallacious territory, because this is a concerted effort to implement an agenda to destabilize Western economies, to destabilize our unifying centralized ethics that we've had in the West forever. And they achieve this by balkanizing the electorate. But that's the biggest argument. And before I can even really have an argument or a debate with a post-liberal thinker, I have to see where they stand on that. Because a lot of people say, no, this are all natural. Liberalism was inevitable. It was going to go this way. And I just don't believe that for a second. I think we've been in a psyop since the 60s. We were born into a psyop, essentially. And I really believe that on some level. I think the culture was pushed in certain ways, like what Yuri Bezmenov broke down with Griffins in the 80s. That's so relevant. If you watch him, he breaks a chalkboard out. It's a 3-hour interview. It's all over the place. And he tells us exactly what's happening. And we've seen it in real time. The curriculum was gotten to with critical pedagogy. It all comes from like Marcusean critical theory, which breaks people up into the oppressor and the oppressed. It's very Marxian. And then it moves into Angela Davis into a critical race theory. So now it's cultural. It's relative to reducing people to their immutable characteristics and then categorizing them. And then you have Kimberly Crenshaw, who conceptualized the intersectionality. Now, this is a convergence of the various identity groups where you would be oppressed on, right? It's just a convoluted cacophony of control under the guise of academia or convoluted legal theory, right? Like that's what people would say when they were saying, oh, it's not in the culture, critical race theory. It's just a legal theory. It's an obscure legal theory. They're not teaching this to children. It's like the whole world is framed within this oppressor versus oppressed narrative. To the extent now where I have a hard time, like my wife likes to watch popular television shows. She likes to watch Netflix series when they come out. And it's always like, honey, why don't you watch something with me? And she knows I have very different tastes than her, but like every time I try, man, I'm just seeing the ideological programming in it. Like, and I read a lot about our susceptibility to being programmed and accepting fallacious conceptual frameworks. It's relative to us being relaxed. It's hard to propagandize people when they're thinking, when they're being, when they realize what's going on. But when they relax themselves to watch a movie or watch a television show, they want to kind of suspend disbelief and enjoy the narrative. But as they're enjoying the narrative, there's all these little things in there, and it's programming or reinforcing programming. And it's shocking to see the ramifications now, having lived through it, right? To see how kids, I use this term a lot, but they don't know shit from good chocolate. They just simply don't even know where to begin.
You always use the example of Captain Planet where the industrialists are the bad guys. I use the example of X-Men, the animated series, where the bad guys are the friends of humanity. It's these bigoted white people, they got like the hairy arms, guys wearing flannel, he's got the beard, like the lumberjack, like, no daughter of mine will be a mutant,
It's absolutely everywhere. And it's not just that one narrative. Like the family unit has been attacked through this subversion. Specifically through our media. Like you look at the sitcom, and you and I have discussed this before. You have a model for a sitcom, a formula, and it involves a buffoonish male and a strong woman who always, she takes her family through all these misadventures, not with the help of her husband, but in spite of his buffoonish nature. And therein the comedy ensues. So that's like it's setting up fallacious framings for things. And we've also seen the emasculation of Western man through that as well, right? Like that's the whole premise of it. It's emasculating us. It's making people like father doesn't know best. You can see the switch too. Prior to the 60s, when the ideological subversion got into Hollywood to that extent, the sitcoms were like Leave It to Beaver or Father Knows Best, which was a good example of like what a Christian family was, or like what your average Western family was. Strong male father that leads the family. So people don't realize the prevalence of something like that. I was trying to explain this theory to someone. This gentleman was actually an academic, and I was trying to explain to him, I think like the prevalence of our stories are what's distorting our culture. And he was like, so what, you mean like the anti-hero? And it's like, no, I'm not just talking about an anti-hero, but sort of. That's encapsulated within this. It's like if you look at humanity, it's like the narrative form and our narratives were crucial to our development and to our social structures beyond that. So like the religious stories that we had, that they were just, I look at religions like a technology, not a mythology, or like an operating system. And I came back to Catholicism. I was a lapsed Catholic, but I came back relative to my intellectual endeavors, that my intelligence and discernment tells me there is a God. But after I immersed myself into it, I started to develop actual faith in it all. Like I'm a true Catholic. I believe all of it. But when you think about it in secular terms, religion is like a technology. It's an operating system. Some individuals, like our friend Wolf, I see in the comments, he's more secular, and some people can use a computer with DOS. They don't need Windows, but the vast majority of people need Windows. They need an operating system in order to interpret some of the complexities of it. I always thought that was a good analogy.
Well, first of all, real men used Linux. Let's get that out of the way. You got a black screen. I think people born in 1880 to 1920, these people, they went through 2 world wars and they saw the Holocaust. So they had a natural distrust of government. The ones that were born, the baby boomers, 1940 through to, let's say, 1980. That's too long. 1940 to 1960. Those guys were under the most horrific propaganda campaign, principally through the CIA. But like, by the time they hit the scene in the 1960s, they'd been completely brainwashed. And every generation since then has been more and more brainwashed. And you're talking about the buffoonish nature of the man in the house. Well, that's sort of the consequence of the feminist movement, which also came out of that. And it's just a snowball effect at this point. Like, the destabilization has just taken on a life of its own.
Feminization is relevant. Sorry, not feminization. The feminist movement is very relevant in this discussion because that's when the state had access to your children unfettered, right? Like, women and men were now working. They frame it in like in equal rights. Everything's framed to help you, right? It's like the devouring mother as the state. But yeah, women entered the workforce relative to necessity during World War II, and then they never got out. So then you got the television that was out by then, broadcast television, and you have the school curriculum that is raising your children. And that's the centralized or mandatory education is one of the biggest problems. Like, my daughter graduated there last year, and some of the curriculum in her senior year just blew my mind. The framings they were set up, like all of the book reports she had to do were on like very controversial culture war stuff, like trying to inundate with the Marxism framings and the white man bad framing, which is one of the more disingenuous ones. It causes a lot of problem too. Not just like it's that's what's facilitating this whole ethno-nationalism in Canada. It's because white people have been being attacked. I didn't like the Second Sons in military formation with boots on and masks with the CBC thing, but that doesn't mean that I don't think they're right. CBC is racist against white people. That can be addressed professionally. And a matter of fact, I can make an argument that it could be taken more seriously if you're addressing it professionally than it would if you line up in military formation with boots and masks on, because then you could be discredited. Then you're just fueling the dialectic, right? But I got an article. I've been trying to, usually if I write an article, it comes right out of me, man. It's something I've been talking about for a while, and I just finally get it out. I flesh it out on paper. But this one is tricky because I've been talking about this right-left dialectic, and it's my interpretation of how it's used as a psychological mechanism, or the primary psychological mechanism to control the masses. This is what keeps us playing off of each other, and it's the extremes. It's the extremities of this ideology that kind of drives the dialectic. It is like when we think of the left, naturally, we've been conditioned, especially in this hyperpolarized moment, to think of like trans-Tifa, blue-haired radicals, masked up Antifa. And then when you think of the right, if you're someone on the left and you think of the right, you're right away, you think ethno-nationalism, you think boots and military formation and face masks and stuff. But the vast majority of people are in the moderate center there of this fake political dichotomy. And I mean, it has such a detrimental effect to just fuel it. And what I'm seeing in Canada is it just getting worse? Both sides are getting more emboldened by each other. And I just see this positive feedback loop that I fear is going to build to something truly violent.
You're probably right. The left-right dichotomy, the left-right thing is probably one of the big ways they use it. Another way is keeping everybody in debt. So they're, living on the edge. Democracy, the illusion of control, is probably another one. I'm at, I'm at my wit's end at this point, trying to wake up Canadians. Just look at the most things that the government spends money on: healthcare, education, pensions. Those are the three ways that they enslave you. I mean, everybody wants to live. You need healthcare. You're taking the kids and you're brainwashing them. There's your future generation control, and then the pension, the elderly, if they dare stand up, you'll just cut their pension off. They're at your mercy. What are you going to do? Look at the elderly right now. They're complaining, I can't live. Well, what do you want to do? You took your future and you gave it to the government, and the government is inflating you to death. What are you going to do? Who are you going to complain to? You don't have any control. You don't have money. You ceded your money. You gave your salary away, and now you're at the mercy of a government that wants to kill you.
And that's where we all are, and we're all like, that's super relevant, but like these poor people, like they just don't have a clue. And it's not because they're inherently ignorant or they're willfully ignorant. I really don't believe that. It's relative to like an immense conditioning apparatus. When you look at what this is, man, I'd like try to really take a broad view at what the West is. It's a labor colony. It's like we're a resource / labor colony, and our nations weren't nations at all. They were commerce districts, and the citizens weren't citizens. We're debt-ridden wage slaves. We're indentured. We're indentured to these depraved corporations that our countries have become in some very real way. And like the monetary system is the biggest thing to look at. Like if you want to realize just how bad it is, like learn about fiat currency, learn about the mechanism of wealth creation. We have let a group of elite people create wealth out of thin air and loan it at interest. And then you think that they don't control the world on some level? Like, I'm sorry, but that class does. And that's not vague for anything. I don't I see a lot of the Zionist issues and that framing, and I'm not super pro-Israel. I think what the Netanyahu government did was atrocious, but it's not just that. It's like that for me when I was learning about everything, all the secret societies. That's like the last layer of the psyop. If you're reducing this to just, oh, it's just the Jews, it's like that's such a disingenuous framing, and you're failing to see the last layer of this. It's that, like, the Carroll Quigley expressed this in his book Tragedy and Hope. Now that's a 1,200-page academic piece of literature, but a lot of people, it's very popular. The summation that Joseph Plummer did called Tragedy and Hope 101, and he lays down the network. This is Quigley's terminology for it. He said there's a network of people. Now, when you look at the Commonwealth countries, it's the Crown Corporation. They control all these various commerce districts through privy councils and through shady politicians and a shady system. But it's essentially everywhere. And this network, I believe it's been factionalized. And you and I, Payman, have talked about this a lot. Like, we're trying to interpret what's happening politically, and we're not seeing the most relevant conversations. We're seeing the plutocrats, the political class, that their whole premise now, they're the bread and circuses of modernity. The premise of the political class is to just disseminate rhetoric to provide the debt-ridden wage slaves with this illusion of participatory governance. It never existed, not in our lifetimes, and there's a good argument to be made, not since 1913 in America.
Yeah, the Federal Reserve. That Swiss cheese analogy I made earlier, they didn't pay for that Swiss cheese. We did through the interest payments. So they're taking our money and they're using it against us. That's why we're consistently getting our asses kicked. And now they have so much of our money that they can literally do anything, and they're working above the law. Like, NATO goes in and bombs the crap out of a sovereign nation. Nothing happens. If go outside and spit on a cop and see what happens to you. I'm not advocating for that, but like, there's a big difference. The law applies to you and me. It doesn't apply to them. Now you're talking about we are slaves. Basically, we're slaves in a labor colony, and we're tax slaves. Well, when did it happen? It happened, as you mentioned, with feminism, where you're taking women and you're ripping them out of the household. You're breaking up the household. Like, people aren't supposed to be just cogs in a machine to a corporation. Everybody should have land. Everybody should you should stay home the majority of your time. Like, it's not normal that your kids spend more time at school than they do with the parents. It's not normal that the husband and wife, maybe it's easier because nobody wants to deal with their wife, but it's not normal that the husband's out working most of the time, or the wife is out working as well. I think that's sort of where everything started, and it started way before the Federal Reserve. This is an industrialization issue, but I don't know how you solve this. If you want a solution, I think we need something like a PPC to come up with a better vision and a better messaging, and give an alternative to this dystopian nightmare that they've unleashed upon us.
Or we could all opt out and become Amish. Just hear me out for a minute. The Amish saw this coming. They must have. I'm speaking facetiously, but I legitimately came to that realization, and it freaked me out a little bit. It's like, how did the Amish see this coming? They were like, no, we had enough. We're churning butter. We're raising burns. You know what I mean? We got it cool. We're good, guys. We don't want in your corrupt system. Beyond opting out, though, yes, I think you're right. A populist issue. Look, guys, get out of this framing. Get out of this right, left. Everything is right, left. Like, it's that framing that's preventing us from seeing what we have in solidarity, what we have in unity. I've been saying the line, we can have unity without ideological uniformity. Right now, we're so hyperpolarized, we can't see that. That sounds crazy. And everyone hates me because I'm not on either side of this. I'm trying to call it out, man. There's a lot of people on here that want to unify the right against the left. I don't see it like that. I believe that's the mechanism of our control. These elitists are sitting back, and they must feel some happy with themselves. When they look at us still not getting it, they know we're not going to get it. We're just going to kill each other again. That's what's going to happen. And we're all falling for it. It's phenomenal to see it as someone who, and I mean, look, guys, I have no credentials to reference. I'm an above average individual who's been paying attention. That's all I have to claim. I read a lot, but I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. And I mean, I'm seeing this in everyone around me. It's just, I'm fucking nuts. I'm just dismissed immediately, right? Except for you guys. Which reminds me, we have 463 people watching presently. That's pretty decent as of recently with the deboosting. If everyone could please share this, it's extremely advantageous. There's a lot of true independent voices that are trying to get past the algorithm, and that's the best way to help them. Interact, share, send it to whomever you think would enjoy it. But yeah, it's the whole thing is a mess, man. It really is. And it's a good segue now to talk about the disingenuous ecosystem on alternative media in Canada. What are your thoughts on that, Payman?
First of all, I have a meeting in 5 minutes, but I pushed it back to 15 minutes. So what's happening with the disingenuous media? Well, on the one hand, you have that post that I shared with you, shared out, where the CRTC through Bill C-11, C-18 is censoring us. That's a state censorship issue. The other thing is people are scared. So you saw that post by Mario, and I actually shared it. I agreed with him, but I think people are scared. You know, Mario, I'm not saying he's a weak man, but he's scared. He's worried about his country, and he's doing what he believes is the best thing, which is to get behind the Conservative Party because they're the best alternative. They are technically the biggest alternative party to the Liberal Party. And now he's sensing that, oh crap, like what are we going to do? So that's another area where hopefully the alternative media will kind of become more objective.
I'm pulling for Mario. I've shit on Mario a lot. I apologize, Mario. I've offered to debate you several times. I'm not looking to flex on anyone, man. I'm not looking to get anyone and be adversarial with them. I realized when I saw that post that Mario might totally be genuine, and I felt really bad. So I'm gonna extend a kind of a hesitant apology, a half apology. I don't know that, like I say, and I do qualify it sometimes. I see a lot of people, and I just think, of course, they must know that Pierre is a feckless globalist actor. You would have to know this, especially with the silence on C8 and C9. He hasn't said a word to this day about it. This is the globalist legislation straight from Davos. It's going to work in Canada like the Online Harms Act worked in the UK. They're desperate to get caught up with Keir Starmer and incarcerated political dissidents. But I mean, I'm biased because I see this. So some of these people could be, Mario very well could just be genuinely interpreting this. And like you say, it's Pierre Poilievre is set up, preemptively propped up, I believe, as an answer to all of this. And I was stuck there. That's another thing I should mention. When I first met you, Payman, first conversation we had, now I was already heavily criticizing Pierre, but I was still a CPC member at that point. By the second conversation we had, that flipped, man. And once you start to see this thing, you almost feel obligated to call it out. Like I initially came on X supporting Pierre Poilievre. Now I dedicate, I won't even tell you how many hours a week to trying to expose the Uniparty in Canada. So, I mean, I want to give some of them the benefit of the doubt. Come to the light side. Scrutinize our public servants, especially our leaders, because no one else can do it. You have to scrutinize your own leaders. But in Canada, we get in this tribalized phase, this tribalized election time mindset, where we think politics are hockey teams. And we think that if someone attacks your leader, that you got to jab back right away, instead of ensuring that there's a substantive response for the criticism. Like if I support PPC, which I do, and someone makes a criticism, I'm going to endeavor to dispel that with logic. I'm not going to get offended. I'm not going to jab back, even as nasty as they can be. I can't say, sometimes I will. You come at me as an ignorant Jew with some ignorant juvenile rhetoric, and I will retort in kind. But I mean, that's the misconception we get, and that's why we get nowhere. We will defend our leader instead of scrutinizing him, and we won't allow the opposition to scrutinize our leaders neither. We will proactively endeavor to shut that down. And it's not hockey teams, guys. These people that are vying for public service should be scrutinized. We used to know this inherently, but we used to know a lot of things inherently. So
here's a strategy for, I'll tie it back to social media. So this is a social media strategy. As you and I have been talking, we have to refocus the conversation from being left versus right to being, top versus bottom. And that means globalism. Like the enemy should be globalism. And you have to work on the wording, because if you go to the average people, you say, it's the globalists are coming. The globalists are coming. They don't know what the hell you're talking about. They think globalism is like going to Paris on vacation. So you need to do that, and you need to target the banking system, the interest rate. The problem with that is when you do that, you lose the people in the urban centers, because where does their income come from? The real estate values. They're landowners, right? They're homeowners, and they benefit from inflation. Their asset values inflate in proportion to inflation. So that means that you have to target people outside of that class, people that don't own land, certain pockets of the city, which means that you have to go after a small demographic. So this tying this back to the social media strategy, try to get a highly educated or highly intelligent, knowledgeable crew of people like JP, like Chris Erickson, like Jason James, and try to attract other people into your movement. You be objective. And I think there is a possibility. It's what I'm describing, what you, me, and Chris are trying to do, what me, Andre, and Tim are trying to do, but to inject civility into the conversation to counteract what you refer to as the shill podcasters.
Yeah, it's definitely the best approach. That's why we're doing it, for sure. Because people are hesitant, man. They come on this ecosystem, like a lot of them are just getting off the steady diet of corporate press. They're starting to look and see what happens, and they get on here and they get caught up with a lot of the shills. They get caught up in the culture war. And it's like, dude, I'm conservative leaning temperamentally. I'm more conservative if I'm going to put myself in that framing. So when I see the liberal bullshit, when I see the most absurd things that have no rationality attached to them, I can't help, man. I start attacking them. That's why I have 30,000 followers, because I was on here culture war grifting before I knew the term existed. Before I even knew what it was, I thought I'm doing right. I'm answering and responding to what I feel is logic to all of this sensational rage bait. But I started to realize, like, I'm fueling this by doing this. And that's when I endeavored to start calling it out. But yeah, networking, man, that's the way to do it. Getting in this space, sharing the posts, guys, again, if you just want to share it, it's immensely beneficial. But that's how we do it, man. We get real people. There's a conservative space happening on X and in social media that's entirely fake. Now, we can attribute all kinds of malice to this. Maybe it's just audience captured, people that have are audience captured, but for whatever reason, they're very disingenuous. They're disseminating the same carefully constructed and cultivated narratives you got from the corporate press. This is just the ideological antithesis. This is the conservative end of it. Canada doesn't have a Fox News, but we have X. And you got people like the Pleb and CAC Canada and all of these guys. They're bringing up smaller guys like Jingle High. All of these bigger shills are propping all them up. That Britney girl. It's like, you got lovely hair, darling. But I mean, what do you got to say about politics? I'm sorry. Like seriously though, like the Fourth Estate used to have integrity. You used to have impartiality if you were going to endeavor to inform our electorate. And this was understood. If not otherwise, you're just convoluting the fucking discourse. Pardon my vulgarity. I know you got some meetings, Payman. I'm not going to go through the questions. Unfortunately, we won't be doing questions today, but I got to do a few honorable mentions.
I can give you 10 minutes if you want to do questions.
Okay, we'll look at some here. So Wolf Raylius is a friend of mine, and we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, but we're very, very friendly with each other. We have our disagreements. So 100% JP from Wolf Raylius, I'm taking that. I had to show that. I like that. It means a lot. And honestly, sir, your opinion means a lot to me. And I do like our disagreements. Sometimes I don't get to them right here because I think it'll bore my audience. But I would like to like we planned, have another conversation for sure. We also got the Buck You Will. Mario is a shill, and we all know it. Maybe, I mean, it's the definition of shill, right? Like, I was a shill. I came on here. I didn't even know it, man. I was on here as a conservative. I kind of believed in Pierre Poilievre, and I was culture war grifting. I was fighting with people. And I'm not saying you shouldn't try to clarify your positions on here, but sometimes we fall into it, man. And that last release from Mario was really shocked that Chris d'Entremont from Nova Scotia crossed the aisle to the Liberals. Anyone who was paying attention wasn't shocked. It's a uniparty. It's been very evident for years now. But he was very shocked by that. That made me question my conviction on him being a shill. But now this one, Jingle is such a shill. Overnight on the scene, horrible. Remember when Cat Canada sat with Christy Fien? They're all paid. I believe that's accurate. There's a network of people, and again, this is conjecture. I don't want any defamation, but there's a network of people that seemingly are working together to keep Canadians. They perpetuating the controlled opposition of Pierre Poilievre. Never ever were people more ready to finally look at our corrupt institutions and our corrupt parties, and they know that. So they're desperate to perpetuate this uniparty right now. And with the suppression from everyone who's not in the uniparty and the amplification of counts like Jingle High, and there's a few other smaller ones, they come out of nowhere. I got 30,000 followers. My friend Chris Erickson has 110,000 followers. Lots of the posts are going like 500 views. And then you look at this Jingle High, who has half my followers, and he's surging. It's not relative to him having insightful content or deep content. He just posts hyper-masculine images of Pierre Poilievre and hero worships him. So I agree with that, man. There's definitely some really disingenuous players on social media. That's what essentially gets me to it inspires me to get on here and talk and network. I want a true independent alternative space, and until we get that, no one's going to hold our corrupt institutions to account. I really believe that.
That Jingle High individual, his role is to mobilize the youth vote for the Conservative Party. That's why they're pumping so much money into his post. The PPC does this as well. They have a wing called New Gen PPC. That's not as effective. New Gen, if you're listening, maybe you should work a little bit harder. But yeah, that's just. I honestly thought that guy was fake, but turns out there's actually like a picture of him. He still might be AI.
Yeah, well, there's no depth. There's not even a modicum of like impartiality. It's just hero worship Pierre, culture war grift, rinse and repeat. But we got one more here. We'll go before we go. This is Sue Kellen Dyer. JP, the government pays people per child. Immigrants are very happy with it. Western adults have children because they want them. Currently, the state of our country is dangerous to women and children. The economic state of our country is a deterrent. People coming from the third world raise their quality of life exponentially. Generational Canadians can see a reduction in quality of life. Incentivizing pregnancy, no. Leave the government out of that. Make women and children immediately reliant. I think there was more to that I can't see.
It's probably no thank you.
Stop religious immigration. Yeah, I agree with some of that. I don't think natalist policies are a bad thing. When you're looking at a population dip, like, we had the baby boomers are all retiring, and that was kind of the pretense for bringing in a lot of these temporary worker programs. The apparent necessity of it, I don't think it would have been necessary if we had looked at, oh my God, there's a bunch of people retiring. Well, let's incentivize the people to have some children. When I'm saying that, I'm not saying like the government should rigidly get in there and demand people have children. There was policies where it's like if you have one child, you would have a reduction in taxation, like 25%. You have two children, you have a reduction of 50%. This is just off the top of my head. If you have 4 children, you pay no tax because you're doubled your replacement rate, right? I mean, these are just it's natalist policies. They sound foreign to people, but it's just logic. It's logic. Obviously, I believe that.
I had a conversation with Bruce Pardy, and I asked him about Mark Carney removing the tax exempt status from churches, religious institutions. And I asked him if he thought that was wrong, and they're doing it because the state hates religion. They see religion as a competitor. And he goes, yes, that's probably what they're doing. But the larger problem is that the state can pick winners and losers to begin with, which is, I didn't think he always got these gotcha comments. But by having the right to give out tax exempt status, the state can pick winners and losers. So what really should be happening is the government should not have the ability to tax you, or if they do, it should be like almost like a head tax. I know it's a negative term, but everybody pays the same amount, like one fee. So Sue, if you want me to meet you and agree with you, sure, let's get rid of healthcare, let's get rid of education, let's get rid of pensions, let's get rid of all these taxation policies. And then if you get rid of that, then you don't have to incentivize, and everybody's on their own. I guess what JP and I were saying, we're just operating in this environment. That Swiss cheese analogy I gave. Money is just it's flying around everywhere. It's like being stolen from our pockets. We're trying to get some of it back.
It's not like we're a country. It's like we're a company store. Remember that old song? I owe my soul to the company store. That's where we're at in the West. On that note, though, we're gonna wrap it up. I want to let everyone know, though, I'm back Monday with Thumb the Wiser at 1 p.m. Eastern, and we have a special guest, Mr. Bennett Hunter, joining us Monday. Canadian libertarian, really good guy. One of the first podcasts I didn't even know if I would take to this, and I was on with Bennett twice, I believe, and we had great conversations. So I'm looking forward to that. That's Monday. Every Tuesday, me and this glorious gentleman, Payman Ascari, are joined with Chris Erickson for The Philosopher, the Stoic, and the Teddy Bear. That's every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern. And thanks for coming out, guys. We have 607 watching. The majority of my views come after the broadcast. So if I can appeal to you one last time, the shameless self-plug, if you could please share this, it's very advantageous for us. Thanks for coming out. My name's JP Berg. This was Dumb the Wiser. Cheers, guys.
Bye, guys.